What's going on, guys? We have Relentlessly Bullied Hero number 2. And just to kind of fill us in as to what we've already experienced here, from issue 1 and kind of catch us up, we have Zeal over here, this unfortunate guy who's all chained up and hanging upside down and being smooched on here. He is our main protagonist, and he is like super ultra mega serious hero type. However, he is kind of bound to this villain, Grimoria. And though I don't really feel she's that big of a villain, from what we saw in issue 1, there's nothing that she really did outside of just kind of stall Zeal that's really villainous. She actually helps save the day. But she just likes to kind of fuck around with him. Now, the whole reason why Zeal can't really do much to her is he's bound to her. She saved his life, and in return, she now holds his heart in her hand. Like, his physical heart is all chained up under a spell in his hand, and there's nothing he can do about it. And so, basically, in exchange for saving his life, she gets the heart, and he is basically like a toy to him. He's there to amuse her. And so that's kind of what we're getting illustrated to us here is he's all chained up, and she just wanted to bug him by smooching him a whole bunch. So that is what kind of brings us up to this. So we have Relentlessly Bullied Hero number 2, Ballroom of Oars. And this is created by Ken Virgil, or Hero Darky Dark, and the artwork is by Jose Debu. We'll go with that. I'm sorry, Jose, if I screwed that up. So we start off, we're at the doctor's office. Zeal's just getting a checkup, and he said outside of the heart not being there, you seem just fine. So he's already aware of Zeal's condition, that he doesn't have a heart in his physical body. And he's like, well, so what do you need? And Zeal says, I need a suit. So this doctor also provides like hero wear and stuff like that. And then we get a flashback. Now, I didn't know right away it was a flashback. I do wish that we kind of cleared this up anytime we have them, because as a reader, first time through, I had no idea what was going on. I thought that this was later on, because we'll see Zeal here, and it took me a minute to realize, oh, this was what led up to his doctor's visit. So yeah, we see these two heroes. They took out the bad guy over here. There's press coverage and stuff like that. And then the two heroes offer some gratitude towards Zeal, who also assisted in helping them take down this enemy. And Zeal, when they're like trying to figure out what his name was again, he gives like this super edgy answer. He's like, I am he whose journey never ends, a tool for the righteous force of good, the staunch agent of shadows, Zeal. And like super edgelord kind of stuff. And you know, they even go, okay, at first we were going to invite you, let's talk about if this is such a good idea. They still decide to do it, and then Zeal gives a very long answer, but ultimately it's a no. And so, again, super edgy kind of answer, and they're like, okay, well, bye then, and they call him a weirdo. And he's like, wait. I just wanted to see if you guys wanted to team up. So what we're finding out is after the events of the first issue, Zeal is kind of trying to find some team up people that he can work with. And we're going to find out more why here in just this next page, because Grimoria shows up and she's like, wow, you really just don't know how to make friends, do you? And why are you making friends? I thought you were doing this whole loan thing. And he reminds her that when he got her help, she blew up a parking lot. And it's like, oh, yeah. So basically, he's trying to find more hero-minded people and not just a villain who will occasionally do good things. Now, I still think that this puts her more in the anti-hero category. And by the end of this, my opinion really hasn't changed much on her. I think I'm just gonna kind of spoil this now. I think she's been classified as a villain because she's not straight up hero, but I don't think she really fits in the villain category. At least from what we're giving at this time. More context later on may prove me wrong, but so far, not seeing a whole lot of villain activity. Just her being more of a troll than anything. So yeah, he's wanting to just find more heroes to team up with, people who have more than just themselves to look after, and he wants to be himself so he can figure out who's the right fit for his personality. He doesn't want to put on a fake persona in order to attract other people. So he's just trying to be himself and find this. And she's like, well, why don't you go to that conference? He's like, honestly, it's more of just a show, dog and pony show, right? It's like a fancy ball. Well, he said this to the wrong person because now Grimoria really wants to go and she wants to be a guest with him. And so in order to get him to concede to this, she ties him up and is like, come on, you're gonna go. No. All right, well, then you asked for it. And so this is where we see, like from the front cover, this is what led up to it, is getting him to agree to go to that fancy ball. And so this is what leads us up to his doctor's visit. And the doctor's like, okay, well, that explains why he was covered in a bunch of lipstick when he came in. And so he's like, yeah, I need a suit to go to this fancy event, and I also need you to kind of help me with a tie. And it's like, that's kind of bizarre that he would ask his doctor for these things. And basically what we're getting is this doctor is kind of like a father figure to him. At least that's how I'm interpreting it. Because even the doctor says, like, I kind of feel like this is more for a father figure, not so much for me. But whatever, I'll show you. But before he does this, he asks, well, can't you just do that with your powers? Make a suit out of it? And he's like, well, for a suit and tie, I'm not really that familiar with it, how it works, to visualize it, and some attempts have been made, and let's just say that they didn't work out the best. So, so we get a little backstory that Zeal either doesn't have a good relationship with his father's not there, something. We know that there's something missing in Zeal's life, and that could explain some things here. But yeah, ultimately, we see that he's committed to go into this ball, and then we catch up with Grimoria. She's with her sister Lily, and she's all excited, and her sister's like, ever since you met that boy, you've really kind of livened up. But be careful, you could push him too far, and, there could be consequences for that, for what we see. And so that's basically all that we're getting here, is she's excited to go to this. She is kind of like pushing off the whole, pushing Zeal too far bit. And I think her sister Lily is seeing some possible conflict for everything that she's putting Zeal through. So then Grimoria's all ready. She's ready for the ball, and Zeal's nowhere to be found. Well, we find out that Zeal's over here taking care of some bad guys, and then he starts to freak out. He's like, oh my god, I'm so short on time, but I can still make it. I won't fail. And at first, we think it's because he doesn't want to deal with whatever Grimoria is going to punish him with. But it's actually Miss Garcia over here that Zeal he's been making it a point to help Miss Garcia across the street, because I guess the light's not working properly and it's a little dangerous for her. And so it's just helping her with her grocery shopping visits. And so even Miss Garcia's like, I think you got better things to do, handling like enemies and things like that, all the bad guys. And Zeal said, hey, if I still can't stop and help out a civilian like yourself, then what's it even for? And I do like this part of Zeal. Even though he can be pretty edgelord at times, we see a softer side of him where he's looking out for everybody, not just looking for the things that can get him in front of the cameras and things like that, which we already know at this point. He detests the whole limelight deal with the superheroes. And then as he sees off Miss Garcia, who looks to have paid him in like celery sticks, is kind of what I'm guessing. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I interpreted as. He's just like, man, I feel like I'm forgetting something. And just at that time, Grimoria chains him up, and he's like, oh yeah, that's it. So we fast forward, and he's all straightened up and looking sharp, and he's out there with Grimoria, and you can see the facial differences for this event. Zeal wants nothing to do with this. He hates this kind of stuff. Grimoria is just taking it in. She's loving every bit of this. And so before she gets carried away, Zeal pulls her aside and has like, hey, we need to set some ground rules. First off, no powers. Second, watch your mouth. Don't be getting carried away here. And also, third rule, don't attract attention to yourself. I don't need an incident here. Being that she's a villainess surrounded by nothing but heroes. And Grimoria's like, well, it's going to be really hard to not attract attention since I have such a nice little accessory, and reveals Zeal's heart here. And Zeal's just like, if I could overcome her spells, I would be snatching this heart right now and not have to put up with it. And while he's over there contemplating the whole thing, Grimoria stole some snacks using her powers, and so he's just like, it was the first rule, what are you doing? But then the host of this whole event, he gets up and starts talking about basically what this whole event is for. And so we get a little bit of history about how there were fallen heroes, young people who came in and tried to step into the fallen hero's place, but ultimately, for various reasons, they weren't able to take over all of the villains who ran rampant. And that this was an event called the Crushing of Ores. And then he did go on to say, there were volunteer heroes who did come up with more experience and were able to kind of help bring the villains down and rein in some of the chaos. And that this event was kind of created to help heroes kind of network with one another and, be able to find ways to help one another out, whether it's like team ups or give tips and tricks and things like that. And, everybody's just happy to see this, and, they give a little toast, and Zeal is he's not buying any of this stuff. Let me get that on camera better. He's just kind of like, okay. And I think we've all been to those kind of things where you're just like, okay, yeah, all this big speak, what are we going to actually do? So he's just not buying it. The speech continues on, and Zeal, he's heard enough at this point. He's like, all right, Grimoria, let's go. And now the outline's hard to see, but yeah, he's looking over, and we have like a little faded outline of where Grimoria was, and she has disappeared to go amuse herself. And we see that she's about to cause a little bit of mischief. She starts activating one of her powers, breaking another rule. But then she notices that somebody is like straight up staring her down. We see this guy. We have no idea what his name is. And he's watching Grimoria. And so she wants to be mischievous, but not actually cause an all-out conflict. So she decides to not proceed with what she was going to do and just kind of see how the events unfold. And while Zeal is looking for her, he is approached by a person over here, and he introduces himself as Vecnoshock, and he is a Volt-savvy entertainer hero. And this is like everything that Zeal wants nothing to do with. He calls himself an entertainer hero. Zeal is already gone before Vecnoshock can even say anything, and then proceeds to continue looking for Grimoria. He finds his way to our host that was speaking a minute ago, Adam Relic, and another Adam, or admin, Jay. And basically, they're just like, wow, we're so glad to have you here. We never thought in a million years you'd show up. And start basically saying, hey, this is going to be good for you. We'll get you payments and all sorts of stuff, but it'll require commitments, and we'll get you all this. And goes to shake Zeal's hand. And Zeal then starts to squeeze Admin J's hand here, and it's like, you got very soft hands for a hero type. It doesn't even sound like you're doing much of this heroic act yourself, that you're just throwing everybody else out there and you're just sitting back on your butt. Tell me, do you even do something as simple as helping an old lady with her groceries and stuff like that? Really, really kind of preachy, but has a good point to everything. And basically, in a longabout way, tells them to go fuck themselves. And Jay, he's ready to go after Zeal after Zeal walks away, but Relic says, "Hey, look, he was a lost cause to begin with. It was a miracle that he's even here. He's got all these ideas and values, but what good are they if nobody wants to follow him? So let's just move on from this." We cut over to Lily, who's across the on the other side of the road on the rooftop, and her dog, Bolas, her dog, is he's going crazy, and that sends her kind of like, why is he going nuts? And then notices, surprisingly for this kind of an event, there is a surprisingly scarce amount of security. Perhaps we should go kind of just check some stuff out. So she gets her little bird puppet over here and sends him off. And we find out this bird is Corby. So we catch up with Zeal, and after that little handshake, we saw him change clothing there with his powers. Now he's in a hoodie and all this. And he's still out there looking for Grimoria, but Vecnoshock finds him and it's like, "Hey man, look, I'm trying to talk to you. Why don't you give me a second?" Zeal walks away because again, he wants nothing to do with these people who seemingly just want to soak up the limelight. And he's like, "Look, man, I heard you were really stubborn and I didn't think it was this bad. So why don't you just give me a quick chance?" And Zeal just goes on a big spiel about how he's just kind of a piece of shit, wanting to soak up all the PR and stuff like that. And he's like, "Hey, look." And also how this whole soiree is just all bullshit. All these heroes should be like more like Zeal, where they want to not be at an event like this, but rather out there fighting crime and just are, chomping at the bit to get the fuck out. The Vecnoshock is like, dude, just allow people to enjoy a little bit of R&R. We all work really hard to try and save the day, but pushing too far and we'll pop. And he goes on to say, like, an entertainer hero like himself, they have a purpose. They can help engage with civilians in ways that like somebody like Zeal can't. By being so out there and open, helps with an image for like children to see and people who are kind of numb to all that life has to offer. Kind of helps break into their mentality and maybe help them out of a funk that they might be in. And so Zeal is just like, "Okay, so are you trying to get me to be more like you?" He's like, "No, actually, I want to be partners because our two different types of personalities offer a lot of variety that could be very beneficial in both a public image as well as our abilities being able to be used to help stop bad guys." But before anything can go forward, there's a crash that happens behind Zeal. And that is that bird puppet Corby. Zeal immediately recognizes that that's Lily's pet, and like, okay, well, if that's being brought down, trouble can't be far behind. And a couple masked individuals come over, and Zeal is unable to use his shadow powers in this particular setting. And he's like, oh shit, here we go. But not to worry, because Vecnoshok is able to use his, so he pops up behind him and gives him a good old zapping. And he's explaining that the situation kind of is more or less a sign that perhaps they should start to work together. And Zeal reluctantly is like, all right, I'll tell you what, we'll give it a trial run. We'll see how things go there. So they unmask one of the individuals, and he's just kind of got a blank expression. And Vecnoshok says that he looks familiar but can't quite place it. And Zeal's like, I don't think that they're alone, and kind of retraces where they came from. And sees like a big old warehouse surrounded by all these little enemies. And in the warehouse, there's a bunch of hostages in there. And so now we have two different mindsets. Zeal wants to just go right on in. Vecnoshok wants to go get some additional help. It's like, hey, look, we're a couple rookies. Perhaps we should go get some more experienced people. Zeal's like, well, here's a couple of issues I have with it. One, if we're alerting everybody at the ball, that could pose a danger for the hostages if the ball is being monitored. Seeing a bunch of heroes suddenly do something different could put these guys' life at risk. Also, all they're going to want to do is just come out and try to save for some good PR. So you do what you want. I'm going to go save these hostages. And so they split up. And we see Zeal as he approaches. He's reminded of a couple things. And we get another little flashback. Again, it would have been nice, but this one wasn't nearly as confusing. But it would have been nice to kind of get a little bit more of a X amount of years ago. We see some bad guy talking to what looks to be a younger Zeal. And basically explaining that all these dead heroes, well, they're dead because they were relying on one another. And later reinforces to Zeal that he can only trust himself, no one else. And so that kind of explains Zeal's mentality as to why he's so closed off from so many people. This is like a little bit of a reminder for him. As we see Zeal just kind of scanning out the rest of the warehouse and as to how he can get in there. We then cut over to Lily, and she is quite literally pinned down. And this is where we get introduced to a villain named Pin. And not exactly sure why she's there, but she must have just spotted Lily up on the rooftop and goes ahead and attacks because, well, don't need anybody interfering with what she's up to. And so she's ready to finish off Lily, but because of a little doll that Grimoria keeps in her was acting a little funky, Grimoria knows to go check in on her sister, and yep, sure enough, she gets there just in time to save her sister. And so now, Grimoria and Pin are now engaging in a fight. And also discussing who is the better villain. Pin, I guess there's like a hierarchy as far as villains. And Pin is already aware that while she's in a supervillain class, and we'll see this later, Grimoria is only in a villain class. So Pin's kind of insulted that Grimoria would even be like trying to step up to her in any way, shape, or form. We then catch up with Zeal, and he's untying the hostages when G Cypher shows up behind him. And so the two get into a fight, and then suddenly there's two of them. And so now Zeal's got to deal with both of them. He manages to pin one onto like a beam nearby. And he's trying to figure out what's happening when the main G Cypher hits him and knocks him down on his ass a little bit. And then we see now there's four of them. So if you haven't gathered it yet, G Cypher is able to make clones and use them. So Zeal is in a lot of trouble here. But we cut back over with Pin and Grimoria. And this is where we get like the hierarchy. And we see supervillain, and there's Pin, and then villain. And there's Grimoria there. And Grimoria, this is part of why I think she just kind of got labeled villain. She tells Pin not to even lump her in with the rest of the villains. I didn't mindlessly squander the time given because I could settle scores. The only heroes I hurt were the ones that got in my way. So it just looked like she was just doing her own thing. And that's why I think she's more of an anti-hero. But it doesn't look like there's like a class for anti-heroes. You're either just hero or villain. No matter if you do anything villain, boom, immediate villain category. So I think that's more or less what she's in there for, where she's just more on like mischief and sometimes does good things like what we saw in issue 1, but sometimes will do bad things. Like again in issue 1 where she stalled Zeal and stopped him temporarily from being able to stop the bad guy there. Now, I don't understand how this next part works. This is not something that we saw before or since with Pin, but she was able to take the heart from Grimoria's like jacket pocket there, and so now she is in possession of Zeal's heart and kind of gives it a little bit of a squeeze, which affects Zeal, obviously. So there is like a magical element between Zeal and his heart, where even though it's not with him, he can still feel its effects. And if somebody hurts it in any way, mistreats it, it affects him. And so we see him just like catching onto his chest. And this allows Cypher G to just start wailing on him. And Pin's just like holding it and kind of like taunting Grimoria with it. And, well, that wasn't exactly the smartest thing to do, because we see a big old explosion of energy. And she basically says, "How dare you even punch above your weight class? We're not even in the same league." And we get a little taste of wrath. And we had it alluded to in the back of the first issue, where wrath is not the thing you ever want to see out of Grimoria. And so we won't see what happens too much here. But this fight is over already, just by simply having Grimoria switch over to wrath. This is going to be a one-sided fight, and it is over. Meanwhile, Zeal is still pinned down, and he's looking over at the hostages, who are now free from their bindings, and he yells out for them to run, but they don't move. And he's just like, "What are you waiting for? Get out of here!" But they just look to be just scared stiff, because I mean, the hero who's trying to like tell him to go, he's getting beaten senselessly on the ground, and he's surrounded by villains. So I get their perspective. And Cypher G is ready to come over, or G Cypher is ready to come over and basically start putting the final hits in on Zeal. But suddenly he and some of his clones get zapped there. And let me get that page. And of course, Vecnoshock has come in. He's helped stall the enemies, and is also provided kind of like a waypoint for them to like escape. Like, hey, look, I got it. Go ahead and leave, guys. Now, a weird thing going on here is we see another hero momentarily here. This woman with like an A on her costume. I have no idea who this is. She's not even in the back of the book. I think what we'll see is perhaps she's somebody saved for the next one. That looks like who we're seeing here. But this is the only time we're going to see her. She's not in the rest of this fight, so I kind of feel like this might have been a mistake. But yeah, the rest of this is the Vecnoshock and Zeal fight here. So Zeal recovers, and then you see the two teaming up. And we get a nice like little montage of things. But the expression on Zeal's face, he seems to be very impressed with how things are going, and is like, I think I can trust this guy. I think this is a good fit here. He's very taken by this, by Vecnoshock's willingness to help out, and how they're teaming up seems to be complementing one another. And so G Cypher is like, okay, well, I planted a bomb, so go deal with that while I escape. Bye. And he busts out of there. Vecnoshock says, hey, look, I got the bomb. Let me handle that. You go after G Cypher. And Zeal's like, are you sure about this? And he's like, come on, man. Haven't I proven myself to be trustworthy? And so out Zeal goes. He's running down G Cypher, and G Cypher sends out a few clones. Zeal deals with them real quick, and then it's back to G Cypher, who comes at him with his little cane, and I think that's how he's been manipulating, like creating clones and stuff like that. Well, Zeal goes in, snaps that, and the fight's over. He takes out G Cypher here, gets them all tied up, and leaves them there for the police. But then an explosion happens, so he's running over to go see what's going on. And we see Vecnoshock is like, hey, I wasn't expecting the blast to be quite as bad when I diverted it, but outside of some tismy things my powers might do for a little bit, I think I'll be all right. And everybody's safe. And so Zeal thinks about the hero that had fallen, and basically talking about how it's good to find people you can trust and stuff like that, and that you don't need to do everything alone. And Zeal calls him his partner. You know, he's like, this is a team now. We're gonna work together. And so we see some things have shifted for Zeal a little bit. He's willing to take on an entertainer hero as like a trusted ally for him. And then we see that he talks Vecnoshock into coming over to the streetlight and fixing it so Miss Garcia over here doesn't have to rely on Zeal to help her across the street anymore. And then we see Grimoria. She shows up and kind of informs that Cypher G, unfortunately, had some clones made prior to the whole evening that he got brought in, and they busted him out of jail. And then we see that he is just surrounded by these clones at his place, as he's, I guess, throwing like a little pizza party for himself. Because they're basically all look to be clones of himself there. And then Zeal informs her that apparently Pinpin got picked up by a hero at the party that was at the ball. And we see her going, I'll get ya. And we see that the guy that was like staring Grimoria down is the guy that ended up discovering Pinpin there. And then we never do get to see the power of wrath, but yeah, there's a big old crater in the wall, and Pinpin's just like staying right there. And then yeah, he continues to not say anything. He's just looking around, and then that's where the story ends. And again, we get some info on Vecnoshock here, and the constant bickering between Zeal and Grimoria continues on that, and I really enjoyed that. So, and that is where the story ends. So right off the bat, there were a few spelling errors in there, and for an example, I can point one out. Right here where Grimoria first shows up, why the sudden interest in befriending. Interest doesn't have that beginning I there. It's maybe a little harder to see on my camera, but that I is missing there. That's just the quickest one I can remember. There's a couple others throughout there. So we do have some minor issues going on there. Overall, I don't think anything major as far as the story beats. I think everything still fits just fine. Mostly just little nitpicky things. And I would give this one a 7 to 8 out of 10, somewhere in that realm. Again, it's got some issues, but overall it's a very good story, and I would still recommend people give it a check out. I like what we're getting with Grimoria. I think that what we're having revealed to us fits more in line with an anti-hero rather than straight up villain. And I think that that is fitting for her character, that she would be more an anti-hero and that she just gets lumped in with the villains. Uh, but she can be quite villainous if she decides to. Like, she can either just be a little troll like she normally is, or when she turns into wrath, she can lay down some shit where she really doesn't want to. But she still didn't kill Pinpin, so that's still more in line, more with a hero than a villain. Um, and I like Zeal a little bit more in this one than I did in the first one. Yeah, he can be a super edgelord at times, but you start to understand more of how he operates, and so he's not. I didn't find him unbearable in the first one. I just thought he was like a little too edgelordy at times. But yeah, I would certainly recommend this book. Um, and if this sounds like something you want to check out, check the link in the description where you can get a copy for yourself, or at least who to follow for any second chance campaigns that may follow. But that is all I have for today, guys. So until next time, take care and God bless.